All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jake Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are at Churchill Downs in Kentucky. Slightly higher production values for this edition of Bet the Edge, slightly more so than my home office and the Marcus Smart jersey from DH Gate hanging in the background. I'm wearing makeup. Drew Dinsick isn't. This is his natural glow. We're going to talk all about the Derby. Naturally, today we'll talk about the Oaks as well. Then we'll talk a little NBA to close, but how have you enjoyed Kentucky so far, Drew?
Oh, it's been incredible. I'm at this point now where I've spent about 20 hours preparing for something that's going to take 2 minutes.
Yep.
You have about another 20 hours to go and change my mind 5 more times. But so it goes. The actual grounds are amazing. They're beautiful. They continue to make improvements. They have a beautiful new paddock this year, which is a nice addition. You can get an aerial view of and see more of the parade of the horses before they walk out into the gates. Yes, I needed to see them warm up this morning. The dedicated time for the Derby and the Oaks horses is 7:30 Eastern time, and so that worked out to 4:30 my time. But it was important to see them, and I actually, it actually did kind of change my opinion a little bit. Seeing the horses prep, and yeah, it's going to be a great race.
Okay. Well, we're recording Thursday, Derby, that is known here. Let's start off talking about the Kentucky Oaks, which is Friday around 5:50 p.m. Eastern. Some of the figures in this race are D. Wayne Lukas racing Lemon Muffin, 30-1, looking for a record sixth Oaks victory. Todd Pletcher, who has Leslie's Rose at 4-1, looking for a fifth Oaks victory. But let's talk about some of the favourites. Let's start with Tarifa, who's 7-2. Tarifa, I'm not sure if that's named after the city in the southern tip of Spain, which I once ventured through on my way to Gibraltar because I had to get out of the Schengen region for visa reasons. But what do you think about the favourites in this race?
Okay, so the most important thing to know about the Oaks, despite, if you're watching now, it is beautiful here, Jay. Beautiful conditions. Track is fast. We're expecting rain tomorrow. Not obvious that it's going to be an off track, but it definitely could be a little bit more on the sloppy side, which could definitely change things. Now, there's most of the horses, surprisingly, who are running in the Oaks at least have some experience on off tracks. So it's not going to really be, an especially questionable race, I wouldn't say. And actually, just when it's nasty like that, and there is some early speed, you definitely have an opportunity to kind of look more for closers, look more for horses that are coming off the pace, and in general, look for some bigger prices. And so I spent a good amount of my day yesterday really trying to make the case for Lemon Muffin of Dwayne Lucas trainee, and ultimately, really, really good prep. 30-1 is an enormous price. It's only a 14-horse field compared to 20 in the Derby, and I'm going to end up using Lemon Muffin in my exotics, but probably not at the top. And the reason is, I like the favorites a little, but I was lukewarm until I saw Just FYI today in the warm-up. Holy smokes! Just a absolute physical specimen. The Oaks and the Derby horses walk out together, and they put the yellow drapings on the Derby horses and the pink ones on the Oaks horses, so you know who's who. And you needed it for Just FYI because she is monstrous. And I know that that's not necessarily the most important part of a handicap, but Just FYI is sired by Justify. Justify, of course, the last Triple Crown winner we had here in the Derby. And, I think she's going to be tough to beat. I think the conditions being off or fast, either one favors her. She's done it against elite competition all throughout the prep cycle. So I've kind of given up the ghost on trying to find a more exotic bet to be had. I think Just FYI is my girl.
Okay. Anyone you're fading in the race that you don't want a part of relative to price?
Torpedo Anna, and I know the Torpedo of famous Australian swimming pedigree. Yes, one of the greats. I'm fading Torpedo Anna just because I think running style doesn't really mesh well with the style of race that we're going to have. Doesn't have quite enough closing speed for me. So I think ultimately she's a mid-pack runner as opposed to really being in the mix to win. And in the matchups, I've taken her on with a couple of the other favorites.
Okay, very good. Well, let's jump into the Kentucky Derby, and it is the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. Don't miss the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. Coverage starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern this Saturday, only on NBC and Peacock. The race will be run Saturday right before 7 p.m. Eastern. Now you've been out here, Drew. Do you have any kind of singular macro thought about the race that's kind of guiding where you're thinking at the moment?
Yeah, and I guess speaking to that particular point, if you don't have a macro thought about how the race is going to be shaped, right, then you're not handicapping it, in my opinion, right? Like if you're just looking at past performances from horses and trying to find trends or looking at like historical significance of breaking out of the 17, right? Like all of that stuff is more witchcraft and less handicapping. For me, the handicap of the race starts with what is going to be the expected pace and who are we expecting on the pace, right? And again, like I'm a wannabe wise guy. I'm not ever really interested in getting involved with the favorite. Right now, Fierceness is a heavy favorite to be the top runner in this race, just based on sort of the current win pool. I think this is going to flatten out a bit as we get to Saturday because there's a ton of support for Sierra Leone, ton of support for Catching Freedom, and Just a Touch as well. But as we look at the way that the race will likely be shaped, the two most important horses who are probably going to finish 19th and 20th are Door Knock out of the 1 and T.O. Password out of the 10. And why they matter is that they are both horses with white-hot, unadulterated speed off the break. They both break well, and that is probably your likely lead pack, 1 and 10, with some other comers, right? Fierceness likes to be on the lead. Fierceness has early speed, and I think if Fierceness breaks and the pace is moderate, then Fierceness wins this race.
Okay.
If Fierceness breaks and the pace is slow, Fierceness wins this race by margin.
Okay.
If Fierceness breaks and the pace is hot, then there is a very realistic chance that Fierceness runs out of gas coming around the final turn. And if that happens, there are really 4 horses to know that could potentially run him down. 3 of them are closers. The obvious second choice Sierra Leone, who I'm against at price. Catching Freedom, who's a Bride Cox horse who has looked truly unbelievable in the mornings. Like the old school hardcore horse, people will tell you look for a horse with a nice shine on their coat because that tells you the testosterone's pumping. And I mean, Catching Freedom is like he catches your eye every morning. He looks ready to run. He's working out with his head down. Like he looks like he's ready to go. And then Honor Marie, the 7, has my eye just on the basis of performance progression. Ran 3 step-ups in a row last year as a 2-year-old, capped off with a win here on this track. Went 2 steps up so far in the progression for this race and looks poised to have a spectacular run and is at price. We're going to get something in the ballpark of 15 to 20 to 1, which is exciting. And then lastly, if it's a moderate pace and that there's a horse that is good enough quality to give Fierceness a run for its money just on speed alone, it's Just a Touch. And Just a Touch is another Justify horse. And actually that would be kind of wild in terms of just like, what are the chances if you had Just FYI and Just a Touch take the Oaks and the Derby double, both out of Justify. That would be kind of a poetic capping to the 150th running. But for me, at least, I think if you want to get cute, you count on a pace melt and you take some closers.
Okay.
And that's going to be my strategy.
Let's talk more about Fierceness, 5-2 favorite, running the 17th post, trained by Todd Pletcher, looking for his 3rd Derby victory after winning in 2017 and 2010. Look at Fierceness's last 5 races, pretty dominant, particularly last time out, winning by 13.5 lengths. Do you think the price overall is justified?
I do, but that said, there are 2 problems potentially with Fierceness. The first is the wins that you see on this list all came with relatively little adversity. When Fierceness gets to dictate the race for the most part, he's impossible to beat. when Fierceness has adversity to deal with, as in the Holy Bowl and the Champagne, he can get a little lost out there. And I think, when you have that blemish and you're in a 20-horse field like this, that's a little bit concerning. And I think when you're, when you particularly, again, thinking about the shape of the race, you're going to have speed breaking inside. Fierceness is coming from the outside. He's going to have to use a bunch of energy to get up there and run with them. There is definitely a possibility that if they're hot, that he has a little bit of a problem. So at price, I think he's a little bit of a pass. And honestly, like if you're betting the Derby, it's an entertainment tax anyway for people like us. Yeah. This is not like handicapping and betting into an NBA pool. No. And so, you don't necessarily want $1 pays 3 or $1 pays 250 or whatever it's going to be. And so if you really do like Fierceness, I actually think the best way to play him is put him at the top of your exacta and then take a couple of shots on the closers right underneath him. Because if Fierceness is the horse we think he is, then he could run this, run well, win by margin, and then one of the closers, an Honor Marie or a Catching Freedom, can sweep up the rest of the field and come in second, and then you basically have a parlay of Fierceness over a horse at price that'll pay something in the ballpark of 30 to 50 to 1, which would be nice.
Okay. Any other Derby thoughts? Any other horses that are on your card you want to get out?
Yeah. So the Just a Touch is the interesting one to me, just because again, when I say I try not to get influenced by seeing the horses much, other than just kind of proof of concept that they're comfortable, they traveled well, they're feeling good, right? But then you see Just FYI walk by for the Oaks, and you're like, well, that's a different species. Yep. And you see, Just a Touch walk by, and it was a lot of that same sort of feeling. He's a physical specimen, and I think we haven't necessarily seen the best of him, which is why I think if he can kind of catch a ride just off of Fierceness through the first 3 quarters of this race, he might ultimately be the best horse in this field. And so he's definitely one I've been intrigued by. I think Stronghold out of California is underpriced right now. He should be more in the 20 to 1 range, and I think if he ends up kind of in this group with sort of the late runners, he's going to be a bet for me just as a win, as a long shot. And then the horse Endlessly, who has closing speed, could very, very well hit the board, in my opinion. I think if you're putting together a superfecta and you have Fierceness or some of the other favorites at the top, the key to get a huge payout out of that is to put a couple bombs at the bottom. And the bombs that have kind of stood out in terms of they look good, they look comfortable, they have a realistic expectation of getting 3rd or 4th. Endlessly makes the cut for me, and Catalytic makes the cut for me.
Okay. Last one. Do you think there's an opportunity for a Japanese base horse to win after my beloved Doma Sotokake didn't bring it home last year?
So we have 2 Japanese horses in the field, T.O. Password and Forever Young. T.O. Password he's a toss. He is just, again, pure hot speed right off the bat, probably finishes 19th or 20th. And Forever Young is an interesting case because Forever Young was heavily bet in the futures pool. And the reason why was the rest of the 3-year-olds looked kind of weak. And so the thought, and no Baffert horses here, the thought was, well, if a Japanese horse is ever going to do it, he's the one. Let's get on. And I got to tell you what, he has warmed up and trained poorly. He has looked disinterested in the warm-ups. He looks like he wants to be anywhere but warming up for the Kentucky Derby, which is a bad sign. And I think ultimately, just in general, his team being very straightforward and honest, he doesn't like kickback. Kickback is when the horse in front of you is throwing dirt in your face. This horse particularly doesn't like that. And in the UAE Derby, where he's undefeated. I'm not trying to tell you this is a lousy horse. He's undefeated. He's won some very high, good graded stakes. But his last race, they were so concerned about the kickback, they ran him 4 wide around every turn. Well, if you try that here, you're in deep trouble. So there's no realistic way I think Forever Young is a contender in this one for me. So I'm going to end up leaving him off my card almost entirely. And I think if a Japanese horse ever wins, it's not going to be the path that Forever Young was on. He ran twice in the Middle East, in the Saudi Derby and the UAE Derby. Then he flew to Brussels, flew to Chicago, had to quarantine before coming into the United States, and then rode for the trailer ride all the way from Chicago to get to Churchill Downs. That puts a lot of fatigue on a horse. That could take a horse out of its sorts. And I think that's ultimately probably what the story is going to be with Forever Young.
Yep. Well, Brussels Airport isn't great for humans, so I'm sure it's not great for horses either. What's your setup going to be on Saturday? What does the day look like for you?
So Saturday, the biggest, the two biggest things to try to do on Saturday from an entertainment standpoint are hit the pick six and hit the superfecta.
Okay.
These are like if you are a gambling man, these are bucket list type of bets you want to win. Because the pick six is 20-cent bet, and the payout can get into the tens of thousands. It is basically a 6-leg parlay. You pick every horse in a row correctly, leading into the Derby as the final leg. And then the superfecta is the vertical, where you pick the top 4 horses finishing in a row, and that one is $1, pays usually in the tens of thousands, especially if there's some bombs down below. And so most of my morning is going to be walk out here at 7, see the horses as they come out of the stables, watch them as they're schooling for the gate, watch them get a sense of their constitution, make my final decisions about the Derby, and then pick six, and then we're going to watch the races starting with the graded stakes over at the Homestretch Club.
Okay, there you go. Well, that is Saturday. This Sunday, Liverpool and Tottenham face off in a must-win match as time is running out on the Premier League season. Can the Reds keep pace atop the table? Can Spurs make a late push into the top 4? It's an Aston Villa top 4 man. I hope not. Find out at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. All right, let's close out a little NBA chat. Friday night games, Cavs Magic and Clippers Mavs. Cavs Magic, bizarre series. Magic 4-point favorites. The total is a lowly 200 flat. Do you think this goes back to Cleveland for Game 7?
I hope not, Jay.
Yeah,
I hope not. I think I saw enough out of the Magic in Games 3 and 4 to believe that this is going to be a tough test, but not enough to make them 4-point favorites. I think ultimately the Cavaliers' defense and Mobley finding that kind of extra gear right at the death to get the Cavaliers across the line in Game 4 was huge, and I would expect that they play with a little more confidence and can put this thing away in 6. I got a lot of Cavs. I would really, really like this series to be over, and I think I haven't doubled down on the Cavs the way I did with the Knicks against the Sixers, but I'm thinking strongly about doing so at +4.
Okay. My concern is that, like Jared Allen with this rib thing, like there aren't too many rib contusion issues where you just miss one game, and he's listed questionable as well for Game 6. Do take heart from the fact that Darius Garland just looked way better than he has in a long time. He was explosive. He played well down the stretch. He had that drive at the end to the wraparound pass to Mobley. And Mobley was awesome in that game. He finally, like he's had an okay year. It's just been kind of anonymous because he's not an amazing offensive player yet. But I mean, he was looking like, the guy who finished 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year last year in that game. Donovan Mitchell is so weird. Like, I'm not sure if is he feeling the knee? Is he just not that good? Like, I don't know what's going on. He looks explosive enough, but on the other hand, like the Magic's offense is just still so grim. And if they're not raining threes, and Paolo, if he's not shooting, I think Paolo shot like 8 of 11 from long mid-range against the Cavs, but Mobley seemed to match up well with him. So it's such an uninspiring performance from the Cavs, but I do think they probably close it out. Let's jump to Dallas, who are 8-point favorites against the Clippers. The total there is 207.5. The Mavs now -900 to win the series. Do you think this has any twists left in it?
Yeah, so Game 5 was instructive. It turns out if you can't make 50 to 60% of your threes, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
And so the the Clippers are in dire straits right now on the road. I think 8 is completely fair. And realistically, happy that the Mavs kind of gave us an honest effort in Game 5 because the Mavs kind of, as we've said a million times at this point already in the playoffs, which is a bad sign. They play with their food, and that's not good. And I think Luka Doncic kind of answered some questions about his fitness. The illness doesn't seem to necessarily be impacting him at this point. The knee didn't seem to be an issue for me as far as what I was watching. And the fact that you got the level of effort and impact from the second-level players in that Game 5 on the road was pretty important. Not exactly sure what Ty Lue has or can do at this stage without Kawhi as far as an adjustment goes. So I would be pretty shocked if the Clippers send this back to LA. That said, weirder things have happened. So
Yeah, I mean, Dallas could, again, they've had 2 games where they just completely no-showed the first half in games 1 and 4. I do think the level that Luka played at and the effort that he played at in game 5, like I've not really seen that before from Luka, where not only was he, like usually the threshold for guys like him and like peak James Harden is just like don't be a liability on defense. Right. He was actually good on defense in game 5, and he was hunting shots at the rim. I think Jason Kidd finally figured out that he has to play one of Gafford or Lively at all times. And if you're going to play Kleber, play him at the 4. Like, Kleber can't be a 5. There's just not enough athleticism. There's no lob threat. He's not a rim deterrent. He's not tall enough. He can't leap enough. But having him at the 4 and he was making shots to be able to do that. And just having Luka and Kyrie just gives you such a high floor on every offensive possession. Yeah. And then defensively, like Luka's just never played with athletes like this, and they're just massive on defense. Outside of Kyrie, who fights and isn't, I don't think, that much of a liability, and having one of Lively or Gafford out there with Kleber or PJ Washington and then Derek Jones Jr., who I thought was awesome. Like this team, like that game, along with some of Minnesota's games against Phoenix, so that was, I thought, the most impressive game that a team has played in the West. And I understand that the Clippers, like, they're not the great team at the moment, and they have they're playing like 5 negative players in their rotation. So, but yeah, did it make you change your thoughts about Dallas winning the West at all?
It made me nervous because I backed up the truck on OKC. And honestly, you're right. Kid is figuring out what he has and how they work, how the parts fit together the best for playoff basketball, which is a bad sign for OKC. I still am excited to see, how the kind of the renewed enthusiasm that the OKC Thunder are playing with defensively, how that matches with kind of the variable nature of the offense for Dallas. And I think there's still a good case to be made that OKC gets through that series without too much damage. But yeah, not a good sign for the Thunder that the Mavs are quote unquote figuring it out.
Yeah, I think OKC will be favored in that series, and they should be having home court. But I think Dallas might have the second highest ceiling of anyone in the West, outside of Denver, just because of the ceiling that Luka and Kyrie can get to on offense, coupled with what is now, like, it's just been a really good defense for 2 months now. Yeah. They just have so much size. They're smart enough. They are athletic. Just having Gafford or Lively out there, having that rim protection, having Derek Jones Jr., who's like a legitimate stopper. Someone who's pretty deeply invested in the Mavs. Like, I don't really believe in them, but I believe in their ceiling. And if Luka is going to be that healthy and play like that, then they can beat anyone and they can win the West.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old school handicapping trick for the NBA playoffs, Jay. Back the team with the best player.
Yeah.
And as good as SGA was this year, and even though he would have gotten my second place vote for MVP, I don't think there's a GM in basketball that would take SGA over Luka in a redraft.
Yeah, particularly in the playoffs where, like SGA, he beat the Pelicans. He hasn't really been tested. His game hasn't, the resilience of his game hasn't had to really be proven as the number 1 guy in a playoff series. Whereas Luka, like, he's proven that. Like, he made the Western Conference Finals. He ripped the heart out of a 64-win Phoenix team. Like, Luka's game, offense and defensively, it looks like, because he's got enough size, like, his game gets better in the playoffs, if anything. So, I will be cheering for the Mavs. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick from the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. We'll see you soon.